I had the Tacoma, the normie backpacking gear from my last video, and a plan to hike a perfect loop through the Cohutta wilderness. But nature doesn't care about your gear. Between a deceptively long off-road entrance and a trail that simply disappeared in the dark, I was in over my head. This wasn't the trip I planned, but it was the reality check I needed. Today, I'm breaking down 3 unexpected surprises that made this my first backpacking trip failure. I love this coffee. It's so good. Drink black coffee in one of those things. Very nice. Backpacking is a lot of planning. You planned a great route, you have all of your stuff ready, your friends' schedules are lined up, and everybody's ready to go. And you hope that everything goes according to plan. Maybe you download an AllTrails map, you've got battery backups, maybe you have a paper map. You probably should have a paper map or a compass. But even with the best of plans, things can go wrong. And that's what happened to me last fall in my Cohutta wilderness trip. Last fall, I went to the Cohutta wilderness area in Georgia for a backpacking trip that was supposed to last 2 nights. Unfortunately, we had to turn around. This is my trail notebook. Let's read an entry. October 24th, 2025. Backpacking in Cohutta wilderness in Georgia. We finally were able to wake up and go see the view of Panther Falls, the beginning of our next day of backpacking. After rock scrambling, getting through dried brush, and climbing over all kinds of stuff, we finally got to the falls. It was dry, but there was something I was not expecting. It was a complete drop-off.
Well, I don't want to alarm anyone, but the trail is basically that way.
We realized we couldn't go any further, so we decided to hike back the way we came. There were 3 things that surprised me that contributed to this being one of my most interesting backpacking trips. These 3 surprises taught me some big lessons. This wasn't my first backpacking trip failure, and you're about to find out what happened. In October of last year, my brother-in-law reached out for a backpacking trip invite. This was to a new area I hadn't heard of yet called the Cohutta Wilderness area in northern Georgia. We were going to be doing a trail specifically called Panther Creek Falls. This was a new area to all of us, although my brother-in-law had a friend who vouched for it and said it was a great area. Cohutta Wilderness is located in Chatsworth, Georgia, which is about a 3-hour drive from Franklin, Tennessee. He also mentioned that there would be light off-roading to get to the entrance. Pay attention to that part. So we stop off at Walmart for some last-minute supplies. Everybody's ready to go. At that point, we decide to drive separately. My brother-in-law gives GPS coordinates, and it looks like it's about 1 hour and 45 minutes away. He informs us that it's a little bit of light off-roading. We decide to drive separately. We all have our own truck. I was not prepared for what was next. So after we left Walmart, we started making our way up to the Cohutta Wilderness area. We were gonna have to take a windy Forest Service road. As we got up there, pavement started turning into gravel, and the gravel finally gave way to a dirt road. And it kept going. I was surprised and not ready for how long it lasted. At first, I was a little bit anxious, to be honest. I had just gotten this truck and I have not driven it much, and I'm brand new to doing any kind of off-roading, even something as easy as that. But after a while, I started having a lot of fun. I started connecting with the experience. I put on some music, rolled the windows down, and started jamming. It was fun to watch the 3 of us begin to disconnect and start enjoying this trip for what it was going to be, even if we were a little bit surprised by what it was going to look like in the beginning. And I don't know if you needed a high clearance vehicle for this area, though I would do some research just to make sure. Depending on how you get there, there might be some degree of off-roading required in order to get to certain places in the Cohutta Wilderness area. Just something to be aware of, just so you're not surprised. It's funny how something that might catch you off guard or surprise you in the beginning can be a big part of a trip. For me, that was something that I really enjoyed actually. And looking back on, it was such a great experience to be surprised by that and have to just adapt in the moment. That was a big takeaway for me on this trip, and actually a huge highlight. It definitely makes me want to get out there more and do more off-roading adventures. We finally arrive at the trailhead, and we're all stoked to get started. We're unloading our gear from our trucks, ready to hit the trail. There's just one problem. It's a little later than we'd like. We finally hit the trail. We're having a great time. Everybody's spirits are up, although there is the lurking anxiety of nighttime before we're ready for it. Everybody's packs are in a pretty good shape, except for my brother-in-law. It's his first time backpacking, and his pack is less than ideal. Fast forward a couple of hours, and we should be nearing the campsite. It's getting darker and darker, and there's a bit of an underlying anxiety that is forming. You understand this if you've ever been trying to reach a campsite before dark, and you don't really know where you're going. We're descending and descending, the brush is getting thicker and thicker, the ground starts leveling out, and it looks like we're near what appears to be a dried up creek bed. There's lots of rocks everywhere, and tons of downed trees. At this point, it's nighttime, for real. We're kind of thoroughly confused. All of us sort of begin to try to figure out what we can do next. It's pretty clear that we've pretty much deviated off of the main path pretty well. I'm climbing over down trees, trying to find a way to get through, and no matter what we do, it seems like we're just getting deeper and deeper into the darkness. We can only rely on our headlamps. It's a little bit weird because I've never been in this situation before. I've never actually been lost on a trail before. After probably about 25 or 30 minutes of almost wandering around in the dark, just crawling over trees and trying to find a way out, we all decide to sit down, take a break, and regather our thoughts. After what feels like hours of thinking and sitting, I decide to do something about it. I pull up AllTrails on my phone and I take a look at the area we're in. I wasn't responsible for planning this trip, so I didn't really have the exact route figured out. I look at AllTrails and it looks like we're a little bit further off the line than what seems normal. Maybe there was a chance we were actually right next to the trail, just not on it. So I scramble across a dried up creek bed in the night with my headlamp and wander off into the dark. I'm crawling my way up this ridgeline and I finally end up coming upon what looks like a trail. And as I start following it, it turns out it actually is the trail.
We got lost, but now we found it again.
Thankfully, at that point, we were back in business. If you've ever been in this situation, you know how much it sucks to potentially be lost. It can actually be a really dangerous situation. That's why it's really important to have good navigation skills, ideally a paper map and a compass. I was lucky that my phone battery was still going and I had the trail downloaded on AllTrails. You never know what's going to save your life, and so try to have a backup plan in case things go the wrong way.
That was good.
I swear I've done this before. I hope this takes you into the experience with me. This is so goofy, but I want to do it to help tell the story. Hey Siri, play. So it's nighttime. We're at our campsite. We're settling down, enjoying the peace and quiet. We've got a great fire going. So after a long day of hiking, we're all pretty tired. And as you can imagine, it's a little unnerving, but it does feel great to be at camp at this point. We're discussing the next day, having a good time, joking around. I'm pretty tired.
Was the original target I set for a good first trip.
First time laying on the Nemo switchback. Seems pretty cool.
It's the next day. We're ready to get started. We get our food, we get ready, and we decide the first thing we need to do is go fill up our water. Filling up water is really important, as at this point, we were starting to run low. The next point in our excursion was gonna be Panther Falls. We're really excited to get out there and see what it looked like, especially since at this time it was peak fall colors, all the leaves were changing, and we knew it was gonna be a great scenic overlook. We make our way to the falls, and it's pretty dry, very dry. But we did eventually find some places to fill up our water. We're sitting there after having filled our water up, and we're looking off this big ledge. It looks great. The view is amazing. But where's the trail? Yeah, I think we realized that we made a pretty major miscalculation. Panther Falls was just that. It was a waterfall. Although it wasn't going at this time of year, it was a huge drop off. But for us, it looked like we were gonna have to rappel down the side of a mountain to continue our backpacking trip. And that's when we looked at each other and realized that was the end of our trip. Well, at least that night of our trip. We had reached the end of Panther Falls, and as far as we could tell, this is not something that you would continue down. In fact, it was quite a big drop off, and having to get down there was gonna be not a very safe thing to do, especially considering we had lots of packs and food and it was heavy. So at that point, we realized this was gonna be an out and back trail. We headed back to our campsite, decided to pack up the rest of our things and make our way out. I learned something important from that experience. You might have great plans for a trip. You may miss some detail about the navigation or the route that causes you to experience something different than what you had in mind at the time. It was a little disappointing. At the same time, it was a great lesson, and we all bonded over the fact that it was gonna be ridiculously hard to get down there, and it was gonna be safer to head on back. So if there was one thing I got out of that part of the trip, it would be definitely make sure to read reviews and always make sure that everybody is on the same page about the route. So at that point, we decided to pack up camp and head back. We were gonna be going back the opposite direction we just came, hiking all the way up that big hill back to our parking lot. Honestly, this part was harder than the night before. At least with the night before, we were walking around in the dark, but we were still descending, going downhill. And although we got lost, it wasn't a difficult thing physically. Now going back up though, that was pretty tough. So if you're ever doing the Panther Falls backpacking route, just know that unless you're planning on rappelling down the side of a waterfall that's dried up, you're probably gonna wanna turn around and head back. The Panther Falls area, at least when I went to it, was definitely very overgrown. And there was a degree of bushwhacking that you might run into, especially if you're not doing a great job navigating. Had I looked at the reviews on AllTrails, which is the hiking app I used, I may have realized that this was gonna happen. I didn't do that, and that's definitely a big lesson I learned for next time. You get the picture. We finally got to the trailhead at 4:12 p.m. Then we drove to another primitive campsite and enjoyed ourselves. This was quite the adventure. Between unexpected long distance off-roading to getting lost in the dark, and then finally having to turn around because we couldn't go down the side of a waterfall, it was definitely an interesting experience, and I definitely learned a lot. It's kind of interesting to be humbled for the first time backpacking, and as I reflected on this video, I realized I didn't really have many bad experiences backpacking. Only things like getting cold or destroying my stomach after a bunch of camp food. I think trips like this are a great reminder that backpacking is about the journey, not necessarily about the destination, although you don't want to get lost. It's one of those things that I think if you have an open mind, you're willing to adapt and go with the flow, it can create a good experience for you. Things are not always going to go to plan, and so it's good to be flexible and adaptive. You don't want to give up, and you don't want to panic. It definitely helps to have friends there and people you can rely on. So if I had some advice after coming out of this trip, I would say understand what it will take to get to the trailhead, make sure you understand the route, and don't get lost. It's best to avoid hiking after dark, especially in an area that you're not familiar with. Utilize things like maps and applications like AllTrails or Onyx to ensure that you're taking the route that is correct. And finally, read trail reviews and make sure everyone is on the same page about the route ahead of time. Or you might end up in an unexpected situation and be surprised. For us, it wasn't that big of a deal that our trail was an out and back instead of a loop. We were able to just turn around, go back to our cars, and then go back home. But it's definitely important because there could have been a situation where poor planning could have led to a dangerous situation. Just adapt and have fun. Go in with a plan, but be flexible when things don't go your way. If you backpack enough, there's a time where inevitably things will not go according to plan. And 100%, this did not go according to plan. And one other thing, it is nice to have people with you. However, solo backpacking, it's all on you. And I have to admit, this year, it's the year I'm gonna go solo backpacking for the first time. And so that was my Cohutta backpacking trip. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something. Have you ever had a failed backpacking trip that didn't go as planned? I'd love to hear about it. Post in the comments below, and let's share some stories. And this has been OutDever. Thanks for watching.